falling star brings luck to those who see it.
So the luck is ours alone?
Welcome to the official Game of Thrones podcast, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I'm Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Greta Johnsen, and this is so exciting because we get to be back with a whole new show set in the world of Game of Thrones.
This is a fun episode, action-packed episode, pre-premiere episode of the show, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which premieres Sunday, January 18th.
Yes, and of course, in each of our subsequent episodes, we're going to be having lots of conversations with people involved with making the show, cast, crew, all kinds of folks. And today's episode, we're going to help kind of set the table for what this show is about.
That's right.
We're going to listen to the trailer that premiered at Comic-Con a couple months ago.
That's right.
And
Bum, bum, bum.
we're going to talk to George R.R. Martin.
That's very cool. So excited for people to hear that interview.
Yes.
And new for this podcast, for the first time, we are a video podcast.
Uh-huh.
We're on video for the first time ever in this wonderfully appointed tower dungeon room. We've got maps, we've got rugs,
Candles.
we've got candles.
We might put on some furs later. We'll see how we feel.
I think it's chilly enough. And you can see us on HBO Max. You can see us on Spotify. You can see us on YouTube. Thank you very much. Shall we get to the episode?
Let's get into it.
In every man there are many men. So be brave. Be just. Be tall.
So, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is based on a series of novellas from George R.R. Martin. The first one being The Hedge Knight, which is what season 1 is based on. I have not read these, but you have, right, Jason?
I have. They're great. It's probably the most accessible way to get into this world. You know, I think the, 5 books that are released, and some of them go 400, 500, 600 pages. Yeah, it can be daunting. But these are wonderful, intimate, warm ways to get into the world of A Song of Ice and Fire and A Game of Thrones.
I love that. Well, and I think the show reflects that too. So it'll be really fun to watch along with everybody. The log line for this one is: a century before Game of Thrones, Sir Duncan the Tall and his squire Egg wandered through Westeros while the Targaryen dynasty ruled the Iron Throne and dragons were still remembered. Great destinies and enemies await the incomparable friends.
Can we do it again with that big drum sound? The dun dun dun.
Are you going to do that while I read it? Or do you want to all do the drums and you can read it? Okay, so we're what, 100 years before what happens in Game of Thrones, right?
This is 100 years before the events of Game of Thrones, but after the devastating civil war that is depicted in House of the Dragon.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Targaryens are still there. Dragons, only in memory.
Okay. Well, yeah. Should we talk about the trailer?
Let's talk about the trailer.
Now's the time.
Yes. This is the trailer that we saw at New York Comic Con. The vibe in the room at the time was electric, really fun. Of course, tons of cosplay, people dressed as dragons, people dressed as various characters from the show. And it was really fun to see it. I mean, it's a new Game of Thrones show. Let's go.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Let's take a listen.
I was squire to Sir Arlen of Pennytree since I was a boy.
He charged me to be a good knight.
To defend the weak and the innocent. And I swore that I would.
Are you Baelor Targaryen?
No.
Then would you move the fuck out of the way?
Yeah, sorry.
What'd you think?
Oh my God, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really fun. As a book person, it's just delightful to see this fleshed out on the screen and to see, a character in Sir Duncan the Tall who is described in a certain way, but I guess I didn't, it's interesting. I didn't think he was going to be quite as good looking a guy.
So the height didn't surprise you, but the general handsomeness did.
Yes. And I think we should talk about the tone. Certainly a different
Yes.
kind of tone for a Game of Thrones
Well,
show.
yeah. So for you as a book reader,
Yeah.
like because you see it in this trailer. It's funny. There's a certain humor, a certain lightness that does feel super unique. Is that reflected in the novellas?
It is. The one thing that really comes out in the novellas is this is a much more down-to-earth story. There are princes and knights and royal people that saunter through, but it's primarily about, this hedge knight who lives very, very rough, on the road, with barely 2 coins to rub together. And that provides for a different kind of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think they've taken a really interesting, different angle here that I think I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because a lot of folks that we've already talked to who are involved in making this show, I feel like they kind of consistently use the word gritty.
Yeah.
And it's not inaccurate because you're right. Like there is just like a down to earthiness. It's dirtier.
It's dirtier. Yeah.
But at the same time, I also feel like it's cozier. You know what I mean?
The weight of the kingdom is not necessarily on the shoulders of these characters. It's their personal honor. It's the way they feel about each other. It's their own friendships and emotions directly about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, yeah, it does feel a lot cozier. And another thing that's different about this show is it's a half hour. It's a much more intimate, short version of the passport into this world.
For people who aren't familiar with the term hedge knight, Jason, can you set that up for us?
It's basically a unemployed knight, a knight who has been knighted and is therefore a figure who is legally able to bear arms and to fight for a lord or for a certain cause, but it's kind of not working right now.
Mm-hmm.
No coin coming in,
Mm-hmm.
no place to really stay. And so they're very often sleeping under trees or under hedges as their only shelter from the elements.
And is a current state of unemployment due to lack of war or not necessarily?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It can be. This is Westeros, so there's always somebody having some sort of war.
Right.
But yeah, often it's that, or it could also be, this is a world in which the family that you come from, who you are, who knows you is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is going to be a situation in which, Dunk just doesn't have those connections. So a lot of it is that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we also should set up the primary setting of this show, which unlike especially Game of Thrones, but also House of the Dragon, really is like we are rooted in one place.
Yeah, we're gonna be in Ashford Meadow.
Mm-hmm.
Ashford, kind of a market town in the southern area of Westeros called the Reach, which is kind of like the breadbasket of Westeros. It's like grapes, wine, wheat, like all the farmland and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very rich country. And Ashford Meadow is going to be the place where this tournament is going to take place.
Yes.
It's going to draw people from far and wide.
Yes. And this is not the first jousting tournament we've seen in this world.
Not at all. Not at all. But it's it's interesting because I think it'll be a different kind of version of what we've seen. Whenever people from this world gather in large numbers,
things go really well.
Things tend to happen. And the things that happen are going to be historic for this world, but also kind of unlike anything else that we've seen.
Mm-hmm. Well, an attorney in general is like a bunch of folks from a lot of different places are all gathering together.
Yeah.
And they're watching people fight to the death for fun, as you would
not
do.
necessarily to the death.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily to the death. Just kind of like to the unhorsing.
How many minutes in are we before? I love that.
I mean, I think one thing that's fun about the Hedge Knight is it's kind of a sports story too. Like it's about
interesting.
It's not like there's a ton of entertainment options in Westeros at this time. It's like the mummers, the live actors and do plays and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the tournaments, which everybody loves because it's action and sports and something to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this story is going to unlock that aspect.
Well, I think sports probably is one of the better analogies in terms of, like, I was trying to think of, like, is it Westeros prom? But really it is just like a big sports
Yeah, it's like the
game.
it's like the Olympics,
It's a
their
big
version
match.
of
Yeah,
the
there
Olympics.
you go. Yeah. Well, and it seems to me like I also can't help but think of somebody like Kristen Cole in House of the Dragon, who shows up to a tournament partly because he's an unknown and he's trying to make his name in a way that if you don't belong to a major family is probably a super useful thing to do at something like this.
I think absolutely that's going to be a driver for Dunk, who is unknown, who has no resources, but who's looking to make his mark on the world.
You mentioned that we got to watch this trailer in a giant room.
Huge room.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And it was really fun just to see. I mean, it really felt like there was just like a bubbling of excitement in that room watching that trailer.
Absolutely. Plus George on the, George on
Yeah,
the
it was a great
stage.
panel.
It
Yeah.
was a wonderful panel.
Yes, I'm thinking about how he wore a bowler hat and how delightful that was.
It was a different hat move from him.
Yeah, we liked it.
Yeah.
So yes, on the panel we had George, we had showrunner Ira Parker,
Yes.
and then we had our two main stars.
Oh my God. Let's first mention young Dexter,
Oh my God.
who plays Egg, who is preternaturally talented.
And so charming. Just
Incredibly
like,
charming.
yes.
I believe he's 11 now.
Yes.
And when he was 9, when he was
I
filming
think so. Yeah, that rings a bell.
it's crazy to think like, oh my God, what was I doing at 9? And this kid's like doing fully fleshed out characters with relatable emotions. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
And our Dunk, Peter Claffey,
Oh my God. Amazing.
was a wonderful guy.
Yeah. Well, and I think something that's been fun to learn that I think also will make sense as you're watching the show is Ira talked about this a lot, the showrunner, that like these two, Peter and Dexter, bring so much of themselves to their roles of Dunk and Egg. And you really, I think like the whole room really got a sense of that
Yeah.
at this panel. Let's take a listen.
The two of them have played off of each other so brilliantly. I mean, just even watching them, hearing about all the times you guys spent at the arcade, getting to know
We
each
spent a
other.
lot.
You guys still have all those tickets,
We
right?
do. We're saving them up because
We're saving up.
yeah.
What are you guys saving up for?
Like
There's-
a PS5
There's
or
a
like
PS5 there. There's a couple of really cool. Do you know the way when you get like a couple of tickets, they give you like the real crap presents and stuff, but then you're like, there's no way you could get that many tickets. But we've been to the arcade like a kind of worryingly long amount of time.
I mean, that's a great taste of the
Yes.
kind of chemistry that those two have, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the way they're like even jumping over each other talking, it's
I
just
know.
like it's so charming.
I think Dex can get the PS5 now.
I bet. I mean, they've got to be close at this point,
It's
right?
got to be close.
I wonder like whose house the PS5 stays at. It's probably just Dex, huh?
Well, you could have it on set, like on the
Right.
trailer.
But like after filming, where does the PS5 go?
I mean, I guess you'd do like a shared custody thing.
You mail
where,
it back
like,
and forth or
right.
something?
every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
This show takes place in a really unique period of Westeros' history. We talked about that a little bit. Let's hear from Ira from the panel they did at Comic-Con talking about that.
This story takes place between the two shows that everyone has seen and that everyone loves, in a time where Targaryens don't have their dragons anymore, that they've very much on the decline, finding themselves in this weird middle place of, okay, so the thing that we use to conquer this kingdom doesn't exist anymore. And everybody starts asking, well, why are they still in charge? And so maybe they feel that they have to come to a tournament at Ashford Meadow in this backwater of a place that they probably wouldn't have done before, to show face, to show up, to shake hands. And obviously that kicks off our story in a very interesting way, bringing them into a head-on collision with our young Sir Duncan here. I think the biggest thing about this show, finding its place, sandwiched between these two giants, was just tone for us. These novellas are they're so lovely and sweet, and they have so much hope, but they also have just really brutal elements of this world that I think we've all come to love in Westeros, where anything can happen. There is a level of unpredictability that, resonates with people because that's just how your life is.
That's a perfect way to say it. Yeah, it's a version of this world where the small folk, I wouldn't say they're empowered, but
Well, no.
not at all. But you're seeing rulers, the Targaryens, the other High Lords, Lionel Baratheon, who we'll meet, have to grapple with what the small folk think in a way that they kind of never really had to care about before.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's also really interesting positioning just in terms of, I mean, you mentioned it a little earlier, the idea of being in a world in Westeros where magic isn't super present, dragons aren't around.
Yeah.
And I mean, what does that mean for folks in power? But then also, what does that mean just for the world in general is a really interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, this is a world in which stability is what everybody is craving. The reason that the Targaryens were in power in the first place was dragons, yes, but also because they provided a framework for everybody to not have to be fighting each other all the time. Before they showed up, it was war, 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 war. War with your neighbor, war with your allied with your neighbor against your other neighbor, and it was just that all the time. The Targaryens showed up with their dragons, and they kind of squashed that for a while. And now that the dragons are gone, everybody's kind of looking around and thinking, uh-oh.
Right.
How long can this last? And then you have Dunk and Egg just kind of like thrown into the middle of it. I think that, again, the smaller scale is going to be really interesting, I think. I think people are going to really... The more intimate nature of the storytelling allows different tones and colors to come up, don't you think? Like,
yeah.
it's
Totally.
The politics are still there and you can feel it.
Yes.
But it's also about how those politics intersect with people's everyday lives.
So I think we should talk about one of the bigger questions that this show poses, which is the idea of what it means to be a knight.
Oh, gosh. Well, that's the question, isn't it? What do you, as a non-book reader, your perception of that?
As a non-book reader, I think being a knight has to do with nobility. It has to do with doing the right thing, even when people are telling you to do something else. And I mean, it's probably not too dissimilar from, you think about a word like chivalry or something, even in like real life medieval history. I mean, I think the other version of being a knight is that you're just doing what you're told by the Lord who's in charge.
Yeah, I think part of what makes the world of a Game of Thrones so interesting in the first place is the way, I don't know, don't you think it's about how it subverts those ideas? Like, you've got this beautiful, handsome knight like Jaime Lannister, who also killed the king and is like seemingly a really terrible guy, or the Mountain, who is this, lord and knight in the service of Tywin Lannister, who's committed like some of the most horrific war crimes ever.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean, Kristen Cole's got a pretty intense rap sheet at this point too.
Absolutely. And this show is about, well, what if you had a character who 100% bought into the marketing of what a knight is, believed the oath word for word, and then has to encounter reality, and I think that's a very relatable thing, don't you? Like, that the world that people teach you about is not what it's like when you're boots on the ground in the street.
Yeah, that's very real. Yeah, it turns out it can be more difficult to live by the ideals that you were raised on than you may think.
Yeah.
In the real world.
And so I think, gosh, it's like, I think to Dunk, it's kind of very simple what being a knight means. The problem is, what do you do when nobody else believes that?
When you're not in a simple world. Yeah, that's a great question. What kind of knight do you think you would be?
A bad one. Very, very bad knight. Terrible.
Do you think you would make it to knighthood?
No, come on. If I lived in this world, first of all, I'm wearing contacts right now.
Yeah.
I can't, I'd be Sir Jason the Blind. I can't see anything. I don't think I would make it very far at all. What about you?
No. I think I would like to be a septa. I would like to opt out of knighthood entirely.
No Brienne path for you?
No. I would like to go read books in a place.
I think that would be for me as well.
Indoors,
Like
right?
maestering, the maestering.
Yes. Yeah. Then you could figure out glasses probably.
I can make glasses. I'm sure we've seen some maesters with lenses and things like that. The chains seem really heavy, but you're with all the books and you're just hanging out.
Yeah. That sounds better.
I completely agree. The problem is everybody's gatekeeping. So much gatekeeping in the world of Game of Thrones. It's hard to get into stuff.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Can you ride a horse?
I know. I have not ridden a horse in many, many, many years.
How were you the first time you rode a horse?
I did okay.
Okay.
What about you?
I have ridden horses.
Plural horses?
Yes. I went to a horse riding camp.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you're good on a horse.
I mean, I wouldn't say that's the case now. And I wouldn't
You
say
didn't
that.
go to horse riding camp last year.
And I don't think I'm like chop a person's head off from horseback level.
No.
So I just don't think I don't have it.
No. Well, Jason, I would like to introduce a game.
Oh.
Called Would You Knight It? Speaking of knightly qualities.
Tell me.
I'm going to give you some theoretical things and you're going to tell me whether or not you think they're knightly.
Okay.
Okay. So the first one is responding to a text by calling the person who texted.
Text with a call.
Yeah. Would you knight it?
I'm going to knight it.
You're going to knight it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, because I think being a knight is to answer the call.
Well, this
Don't
is
you
making
think?
the call. This is making the call.
Yeah, but you're also answering. Someone has reached out and said, hey, what up? Did you want to find out what's up? Would you knight it?
I don't know. I was going to say no because it's invasive.
Okay.
But I do. You may have turned me around on it, actually. And I do think there are instances where, the text, you're too far down the text rabbit hole.
What are we doing?
We could really solve this in about 45 seconds of just human conversation.
Jump on the horn. Let's go.
Okay, so we're going to knight that one.
Yes, I'm knighting it.
Shockingly.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. Gossip.
I'm knighting it.
Wow.
Here's the thing about gossip. Gossip is underrated.
And it's the accountability.
In this world.
Social.
Yeah, in this world, there's no access to justice. There's no access to lawyers. If you know something about somebody.
Yeah.
You know that they're a jerk or whatever, or a dangerous person.
Yeah.
I think would be obliged to tell somebody.
It is knightly to pass that on.
And I think it's knightly. What about you? Gossip?
I like that. Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think ideally it's fact checked and then you could just call it journalism.
Sure. You're not lying. I'm not saying lying about something.
Right. Because I think that's the problem about gossip, right? Is it can overinflate very quickly.
Tail goes in the telling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not knightly. But I like it otherwise.
Okay.
Are there any that you would like to bring forth to night court?
Oh, yeah, sure.
no
What about
pressure.
this?
Okay.
You go to a restaurant, somebody orders fries, and you didn't order fries, but you want them.
Okay.
Asking if you can have some fries.
Ooh, I did this today. Well, not quite today. I offered onion rings and then I got fries in exchange.
I mean,
is that the same thing?
That sounds as knightly as it as can be.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's nice to be able to, then it's just a fair trade.
Absolutely.
I think I usually would wait for someone to offer up fries. What about you?
That's very knightly. I think it's knightly, but to your point, it must be, listen, one must not take advantage of the overly fried. One must respect private property in the form of fries and any kind of food stuff. And so you have to ask. But if you ask, I think it's knightly.
You're right. Well, the thing is, you're not usually getting 5 French fries. So it's easy enough to share the wealth,
Well, we teased it up front. We interviewed George R.R. Martin.
Yes.
Ever heard of him?
This was such a joy to get to talk to him.
It really was incredible. He was so generous with his time. And let's listen to that interview now.
Well, today is a very special day because Jason and I are here with the man who created it all, a true knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the George R.R. Martin himself. George, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
George, let's talk about the Hedge Knight novellas. What inspired you to write those originally?
I was writing, of course, I had written and published Game of Thrones, and I was working on the second book, Clash of Kings, which of course was late. But Bob Silverberg, a friend of mine, one of the great writers and editors in the field of science fiction, had sold an anthology called Legends, an original anthology. Those were very big in that day. And Legends was sold for a lot of money. It was, an all-star collection full of the biggest names in fantasy in particular. 10 original stories set in the universes of 10 of the biggest fantasy writers in the world. He had Robert Jordan was in there. He had Stephen King in there, Anne McCaffrey, Ursula K. Le Guin, really all-star lineup of people, and me, who really didn't belong in there at that time. I had one book out that had done pretty well, but my second book was not out yet, and so I signed a contract to write an original Westeros story. It had to be a Westeros story, and then afterwards I said, "Oh God, what do I do? I don't have a Westeros story for him, and I'm not finished the story yet. How can I write like a Tyrion story? Then it would give away what happens to Tyrion in the later books. So I said, no, it's got to be a prequel. Got to be a prequel. And for a long time, I didn't know what it would be, but then the idea came to me for what would become the Hedge Knight, beginning with Dunk. I wanted to tell a story that focused to some extent on the small folk, as I call them, on the people who are not lords. They were not contending. They weren't going to get the Iron Throne unless everybody else in Westeros died. So what all these things that are going on, the civil wars and the magic and the threat of the others or the White Walkers in the north, all of that, how does that affect the ordinary people? So I started writing what would become the Hedge Knight eventually. However, the interesting thing was I was still a few months away from delivering. Silverberg's deadline was the end of the year, which would have been December 31st. He said, all right, but you better be, I'm sending in his book January 1st, you better be in there or you are dropped. And, I got it done, and I delivered the Hedge Knight to him on December 31st. And oddly enough, he told me later, there were like 3 other writers who also delivered on December 31st. So I wasn't the only writer who didn't know how to make a deadline. But I'm very glad I did. That was one of the best decisions I ever made as a writer, because in subsequent years, going to cons, I ran into a lot of people who would said to me, I'd never heard of you before. I know you've been around a long time, but I'd never read any of your books. But I picked up Legends for the Anne McCaffrey story, but yours was the best story in the book. I picked up Legends for the Stephen King stuff, but I loved your stuff. I picked up Legends for Ursula K. Le Guin, you name it, but God, I loved your stuff. And then they continued to buy my book. So when Clash of Kings finally did come out, it sold a lot better than Game of Thrones. I saw a real uptick.
The Hedge Knight is written very differently from a Game of Thrones in that we follow mainly Dunk's perspective for the
entirely Dunk's perspective.
Entirely. How does that change the storytelling for you?
Well, it simplifies it in some ways.
Sure.
Because you're only writing from a single viewpoint. I mean, yes, when I began Game of Thrones, I have like 7 or 8 viewpoint characters in the first one, and I'm intercutting between them. And in later volumes in the series, I add even more characters. So it's a real mosaic of different people seeing the same events in different ways, having a different interpretation on them. But writing a short story or a novella in this case, where you're focused on one character and you're just seeing the story through him, that's a different sort of thing and can be very powerful. It can be also very challenging because, the character you're writing about doesn't necessarily understand everything that's going on.
Right.
And particularly, Dunk, I love Dunk. He's one of my favorite characters, but he's not the smartest character I've ever featured in any of my books. And he's certainly not, was the squire to a hedge knight. He roamed all around Westeros, getting jobs that lasted a month, maybe if he was lucky, or a battle. And, they fed him, but, in the Middle Ages, they had this whole thing about salt, as you may know.
Yeah.
They put a huge salt shaker on the on the table, big, not a little thing that we have, but a huge thing that had all the salt in it. And then you would sit at these long tables, and the question was, would you be above the salt or below the salt?
Oh, wow.
And if you were below the salt, okay, you could eat, but we didn't care too much about you. People, the nobles, the lords, the great knights,
I love that.
they were above the salt.
That's perfect.
It is, right.
You mentioned the life of a hedge knight. I think, as we will see with this series, one of the big questions here is, what does it take to be a knight? What does it mean to be a knight? And I think Dunk obviously is going on that journey and exemplifies so many really lovely, noble qualities. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that's a fascinating question. It's one of the things that interests me about this, the whole concept of knighthood. I mean, I was, even before the Dunk and Egg stories with just Game of Thrones and the other things, I've been fascinated by the concept of chivalry and knighthood and all of that. If you go back through the whole history, and there's 1,000 years of history, so it's complicated, but I think chivalry is one of the most idealistic philosophies ever put forward in the human race. Your knights are supposed to be noble. They are supposed to be protectors. They're supposed to protect the weak and the innocent, and they're supposed to protect women, all of that stuff. And it's really, in some ways, a very appealing kind of concept. It reminds me a little bit, because I started out as a kid as a comic book fan.
Yeah.
And, the superheroes. What the hell is Superman doing? What is Batman doing? Why these guys dressed up in spandex fighting crime? Well, it's an aspect of nobility. They want to leave the mark, to make the world a better place. And that is the ideal of knighthood, and I find it very, very attractive. But the reality of knighthood was not at all that. The knights were soldiers in service to their lords, and they were like killing machines. They rode into. You read about some of these battles, Poitiers, Crécy, these battles, and the great knights killed 37 people, and holy shit, what magnificent warriors these knights have to be.
Yeah.
And then you look into it a little deeper and say, but the knight was on a horse in full armor,
Right.
and the 37 people were peasants, and they had hoes, and they were running across the field, and the knight killed them. There's still 37 of them, so it's something, but it's not quite as heroic as it seemed. And some knights did pretty bad things, So I find in the conflict between the ideal and the realistic, the tremendous grounds for powerful stories and for fiction. I think it was Faulkner who, in his famous Nobel Prize acceptance speech, he said, the only thing worth writing about is the human heart in conflict with itself. And I agree with that. And that's what these stories are about, the human heart in conflict with itself.
It strikes me that you put a lot of that into Dunk, a lot of this kind of feeling, because his disillusionment with the reality of knighthood is such a motivator for him.
What's it like? I mean, clearly this isn't your first adaptation, but I wonder what it's like to see the Dunk and Egg story come to life the way it is in this series.
It's really magical, and I said that in a couple of the other interviews I've done today and in other speeches. I mean, when you write a book, a short story, a novel, it's a very alive to you. Not to everybody. All writers are different. You know, I once wrote a novella that won some awards and lost others, called Portraits of His Children. And it was about a writer. It was a supernatural story, but about a writer who's haunted by his characters, because they start showing up at his house and talking to him about his life and all of that. Now, I don't have any real flesh and blood children, but as that story kind of suggests, yeah, for many writers, your characters are your children.
Yeah.
And they're also you. I mean, to really develop a character, particularly a viewpoint character, correctly, you got to crawl inside their head. You got to try to see the world as they see it, try to feel the emotions that they're feeling, which isn't always easy, because sometimes you're very, very different from the person you're writing about. But nonetheless, it's crucial, and you wind up identifying with them, to a greater or lesser extent, and really trying to see the world or the things that are happening in the way that they do. So there's definitely a very close and emotional attachment there.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and if I have the time, there's more stories to tell about Dunk and Egg and their education and what's going to befall them in future years.
Oh, we look forward to that.
Well, that's lovely. George, thank you so much for talking with us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great.
It's a pleasure. That was our interview with the incredible George R.R. Martin.
Like the way he thinks about stuff, how deeply he thinks about story, and just like what a fan he is of other people's stories, of comic books, of movies and television. It's fun to talk to a guy like that.
Yeah, it feels like he's really built his career off of, yes, creating these amazing stories, but also just like enthusiasm, and I think, to your point, like fandom.
Yeah,
because he is clearly so devoted to that, and I think
fandom.
it translates really beautifully in his work too.
This is a guy who went to the very first Comic-Con.
That's wild. Do you remember what year that was?
1964.
Oh my God!
The Beatles were
that was
just
even earlier.
Beatling.
Beatling. They were still just holding hands.
It's true.
They weren't even doing drugs yet.
What a delightful interview that was.
Yes, that was really delightful.
Yeah. Before we go, we also want to tell you about a new Game of Thrones mobile game that's called Game of Thrones Conquest.
Nice. Have you played it?
I have not yet played it, but I'm excited to play it.
Awesome.
It's a game that lets people enter the world of Westeros and keep the fun going. And listen, I think we all agree, the fun is always going.
We got to keep the fun going.
You get to build your own house, raise armies, claim your seat on the Iron Throne. These are the type of games that I get sucked into. That's the thing that gives me a little bit of trepidation.
I understand. You're like, how many days, or am I just going to lose to this?
As soon as I see my little people go out and chop wood and start building castles, I'm like, uh-oh, what happened? Is it daytime? The sun's rising? What day is it? You can download Game of Thrones Conquest today in the Apple or Google App Store, and HBO Max subscribers get special rewards. So go to gotconquest.com/podcast to claim yours.
Awesome. Well, that's it for this episode, but we have a lot of really great stuff coming up.
A Night of the Seven Kingdoms premieres on HBO and HBO Max on January 18th. And don't forget, join us right after the episode as we break it down with series creator Ira Parker.
Yes, if you like what we are doing here, don't forget to leave us a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. And you can find us on the Game of Thrones social media handles. And of course, you can also watch us on YouTube, Spotify, and HBO Max.
The official Game of Thrones podcast, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, is produced by HBO in collaboration with Same Boat Studios. This podcast is hosted by Greta Johnsen
and Jason Concepcion, who produces the show as well. Our executive producers for Same Boat Studios are Gabrielle Lewis and Barry Finkel. Our senior producer is Ben Goldberg, and the show is mixed by Hannes Brown, and our video editor is Stefano Sanchez, and our digital content producer is Insung Huang.
Special thanks to Michael Gluckstadt, Allison Cohen-Sorokach, and Kenya Reyes from the HBO Max podcast team.
And thank you for listening. We will see you soon when we have all met Sir Duncan the Tall and Squire Egg.
I know I'm just a hedge knight, but sometimes I think there could be more.